I'm going to take a look at designing a very simple wheel, and I'll use instances for creating the repeated pattern of holes. Here's the completed wheel model, and the main surfaces have been built using the revolve tool. So this tyre surface, for example, was revolved from this curve here around the global y-axis. And the main wheel surfaces have been trimmed to create the holes. So if I untrim it, you can see the curves on surface. And here you can see the curves that were used to revolve the wheel surfaces. But for this tutorial I want to focus on the pattern of holes. And here there are 10 curves used to project and trim the wheel. 1 original and 9 duplicates, which I'll just delete and recreate again using instances. The tool I'm going to use is on the Edit menu, and it's called Duplicate Object. And I need to go into the option window. I can set the number of duplicates to 9 so that I get 10 in total. And then I can set the X, Y, Z translation, rotating or scaling between the duplicates. So I'm going to rotate by 36 degrees in the Y direction. And then I have a choice of normal copies or instances, which I'll select for this example. And then at the bottom of the window I've got a Go button, and the pattern is created. And notice that I got the pivot point in the right place for that rotation. So what are instances? Well, if I look in the object lister, you can see that they're shown as white cubes, whereas the original is a normal orange cube, and that they're connected. Also, they don't have their own CVs, and that's because they're all driven by the first shape. So if I pick CVs and modify them, then they'll all update, which is the point of using instances. So it can be a radial pattern like this one, or a linear pattern, depending on the settings I put into the option window. Now the only problem with instances is that they can't be used like normal curves for projecting and trimming. So I'll need to use the Edit Expand Instances tool to convert them back to normal independent geometry. But I really want to use instances to work interactively with my design on the surfaces. So I'll delete these independent copies and take a look at working on the surface instead. So I'll start by revolving my surface to be trimmed. But instead of doing a full 360-degree sweep, I'll just do a tenth, so just 36 degrees. Now my hole is centered on the grid, so if I want to center my wheel segment as well, then I can just pick the curve and rotate it on the y-axis by minus 18 degrees. And that will now center my segment. So now I can project the curve, and I could use the view option in this window, but I'll just leave it at the y-axis direction for now. And then I can trim the hole, and I have my curve, my surface segment. So what I can do now is duplicate that surface segment using the same settings as before in the Duplicate Object window. So creating instance copies to form the complete wheel. But each segment is now still being driven by that single curve that I projected because of the instancing. And this now lets me explore the design and be able to visualize the balance and the rhythm of the pattern and make any changes to my whole design that I want to. Now we don't use instances very often, but wheels are a classic example where they're very useful. So to summarize, one way to create linked patterns is to use the Duplicate Object tool set to instances. And if you're doing a revolve, don't forget to set the pivot point of your curve or surface in the right place. And then the key thing is to use the Pick CV tool to modify the CVs to reshape the instances, because it doesn't work if you're using Pick Object. And then to turn the instances back into normal geometry, use the Expand Instances tool. And finally, there's a whole set of more advanced array tools available on the Transform palette that give you further options for creating patterns.